Hey everybody, it's Kate Richburg and welcome to Free Tip Friday. Just like I promised, I was going to record a show for you all about the glues that we carry here at beadshop.com. I love using glue, and I think this short little how-to tips video is really going to help um, just kind of clarify some things for you. So let's get started. This is going to live in our Bead Shop Basics over on our YouTube channel as well as on our website at beadshop.com. So let's jump right in. It is pre-recorded, so I'm sorry I won't be able to answer your questions live, but hopefully I will go over everything you need to know. So let's go ahead and take a look at what this kind of messy mess I've got in front of me here. So just bear with me here a second. And let's take a look at the different glues that we carry here at Bead Shop. We carry three, kind of our what do I want to say? The three real basics that we use most of the time on mostly everything. That's the Zap jewelry gel, the GS Hypo, and this E6000. And the GS Hypo, when you get it, it comes in a package that looks like this. The Zap looks like this. And the E6000 comes in a little baggie, but we carry these small tubes like this. So they each do different things. And what I'm going to do is, I have a baggie here in front of me, and I'm going to extrude a little bit of this glue out just so you can see what it looks like. Okay, I'm going to start with the one that's kind of the thinnest, which is this GS Hypo. Now, GS can be kind of a pain to use, right? When you get it out of the box, it's super pristine and nice, right? And as you use it more and more, the tip kind of gets funky and you get glue around there and stuff, right? It happens to all of us. What I do, one of the tips for storing this glue is I store it right here on its little bottom, okay, so that the glue doesn't run out the top of the tip. But when I take it off here, and especially after I use it, but sometimes even before I use it, I'll get my Kleenex and I'll try and take away any of that extra hardened glue. And you can see that there's glue that's kind of hardened around here, right? So you can see this flows pretty quickly. And I'm just going to drop a little bit here on this baggie. And can you see how it's pretty runny, this glue is, right? So this is the glue that we use, that I use when I'm like tying knots in thread or leather. So I'm just going to extrude this. I'm going to wipe it off as quickly as I can, and I'm going to put the lid back on. You can see that the glue still kind of likes to come out a little bit. So what I do is I try and line up the pin here with the top of the glue. The top of the glue is kind of angled here. Then what I do is, before I push this down, I give it one more wipe and then I push it down. And that usually stops the flow of the glue. Okay, so there's my GS. This Zap jewelry gel, it's a gel. Okay, so it's like a super glue, except that it's thick. All right, and it stays where you put it. So see how whoops, and I just dropped the lid, but it's not as runny as the GS, right? So it stays where you put it. So can you see that there, how this GS over here is kind of run? The Zap kind of stays. Again, I wipe the tip off and then I put my lid back on. Okay, so there's no glue at the tip, so it doesn't get, the lid doesn't get glued on. Here's our friend, the E6000. Let me extrude some of that out and see how it comes out in kind of this giant kind of lump of glue, right? And it feels like it's already setting up. Okay. E6000, we carry it in these really small tubes because in the big tubes, it can go bad pretty quickly. So these small tubes, they're 0.18 of an ounce of a fluid ounce. So they're not that big. So you can hopefully use it before it hardens in the tube. Sometimes it extrudes out around the sides and it's kind of messy. So you can see here it's been sitting out for a little bit and see how it's already starting to set up. So this E6000, see, and again, it's a little cold. I'm right under an air vent. So can you see how this is starting to set up already? So you've got to be prepared. And that's one of the things for glue, you guys, is don't like squirt your glue out or put your glue out somewhere before you know what you're going to use it for. Okay, so let's just say I've got this piece of thread here, and this is what I use the GS for a lot, right? And let's say that I've tied a knot maybe at the end of a thread, or it's going into an end tip, or it's at the bottom of a tassel, or something like that, right? Anytime I need a thread or I need a knot where the thread is going to remain, sorry, I'm out of focus there. Anytime I need a knot that's going to remain flexible and I need that glue to saturate into my thread, I go ahead and I use the GS Hypo. And see, I've tied that knot and now I'm adding this GS. I'm going to wipe the lid over here, right? And get that lid right back in. I can see the little angle and I can feel it with the pin of the GS. Usually there's a little bit of glue mess as I try and get it back in there. So I wipe. Let me go out a little bit further so you can see what I'm doing. I wipe again, I'll wipe there so there's no glue coming out, and then I'll push it back in. Then what I'll do is I have a bunch of toothpicks here. So with this knot that I've just tied with this GS on here, I can kind of smush, the technical term is here, press that glue down in there like that. And then usually what I'll do is I will let this dry like 24 hours before I cut it or singe it or whatever. But then usually what I'll do is I'll get my thread burner or my thread snips, depending on what it is, and I'll just come in and I'll singe this thread right at the glue. Okay, and so that'll also help this to kind of singe in on itself as well. But that is a nice clean knot. So anytime you need a knot that's flexible, where your GS, it's not going to run down your thread and stiffen what's going on here, right? So knots, knots in leather, like if I have leather cord like this, right? Those knots. And let's say for whatever reason, I had to tie a knot here and cut this away. What I would do is before I tighten this knot, and this goes for a lot of like knots and stuff that I'm closing up with the GS, I'll put a little bit of glue where that knot is eventually going to end up, right there. And then I'll finish tying that knot, and the glue will live down inside the knot, and I can move any extra glue that I need to down to that knot. plastic baggies rather, are definitely your friend when you're working with glue so that your work surface doesn't get all covered with glue. But see how malleable this glue is, right? And I can kind of push it into place. And again, I like to let this glue dry 24 hours. Okay, let me put this lid back on. And then let's move to our zap. Okay. This also is great. What I didn't mention it, but if you do any rhinestone jewelry repair, right? If you are gluing like a little point back rhinestone or something back into a brooch, this is the one to go with. The tip is super precise. You can get it right in there. Then you just drop your little stone right in, let it sit overnight, and you'll be good to go. Okay, so this is really great for precision gluing. Let me kind of clear the decks here a little bit with that. And let's take out our zap. Now, zap glue I use when I want to glue like two things together. Okay, and sometimes zap and the E6000 are interchangeable for me, but I use the zap a lot especially when I have to fill a gap, if it's not a really big gap. Okay, so this is a stone on stone that we glued together that we used for a mala center. Okay, but what we would do if I were doing that with this piece here, I would center everything the way I'd want it to be centered, okay, on my stone, like that. And then I'd come in with my zap. And you want to be pretty careful. What I'll do is I'll find like, here's the highest part of my stone. So I'm going to go ahead and extrude that zap right onto the stone at these highest points. Okay. I'm not going to smear it all the way around. I just want to identify where I think that the points, the good points of where it'll adhere, where that would go. Then I'll pick up my I Ching coin right here and I'll come in and I'll drop it right on the piece and I'll push it down so that everything makes really good contact. And then I won't screw with it, right? That's it. I'll let this sit overnight, and that zap, you can see just a touch. It's kind of hard to see on camera. Just a touch has kind of come out from the boundary here. So I'll put my finger in the middle and I'll use my toothpick to very, very carefully remove any extra glue. Now, can you see why I didn't just, extrude a whole bunch of glue on there and push this thing down, right? I want to be really kind of precise with where I put my glue. So I've got those north, south, east, west points on here. So this is just going to sit overnight and then it'll be ready to use. You can also use the zap if you are gluing a piece of leather. And I use the zap or the E6000. Kind of just depends on what I have around. But anytime you're gluing like a piece of flat leather into a clasp, now this piece of flat leather here, it fits in perfectly, but you can see when I hold it up, it's kind of hard for you to see. It might be a little crooked, right? It's not straight across. So I'm going to give that a cut with my wire cutters. So I've got a nice straight across cut there. So what I'll do with my zap, I'll extrude my zap right onto my baggie here. And what I'll do is with my toothpick, and I'm not going to do this because I don't want to wreck this clasp, but what I do is I add my glue here at the top of my cut along the back here of my core of my flat leather. And I'll also get a little bit on the tip here and I'll run that around the inside. I don't put any of the glue on the front of my leather so that when I slide this in like so, any extra glue that's going to come out is going to come out the back. Okay, so then you can just take your toothpick and pull it off like that, and the front should stay clean. Okay, you can also do that with your E6000, especially if you have a clasp that has a lot of space that you have to fill. Okay, so let me grab this 20 millimeter clasp here and let's take a look. You can see here this fits pretty well in this 5 millimeter, but see how this one, this 20 millimeter, it has a little more space to it. So this E6000, as you saw up here, now it's pretty dry, but it really fills up space. So if I'm doing something like this, I'll put that E6000 again on the back here, and then I'll put a little bit more of that E6000 on my toothpick, and I'll kind of fill in this trough here, okay? Then when I go ahead and put my leather or whatever it is I'm gluing this onto, that E6000 is going to take up that extra space there in the back, and it's going to make a really nice tight bond. Okay. Let's also say that maybe you wanted to, like for instance, in the middle of this bead right here, this table cut bead, there's a spot where this goes down. Zap glue is a great way to add something to like gluing glass to glass. Okay, so I'm going to come in, I'm going to get a little drop, not a little drop, but a good size drop without it being too gigantic of that zap. Then what I'm actually going to do is I've got a 6 millimeter bead here. I'm going to come in, I put it on a head pin, and I'm going to drop that bead right there. Now, I want this to be pretty even, so maybe I'll use something. Whoops, this is moving around a little too much for me. But I might want to prop it up a little bit here. And then, whoops, totally off camera. So sorry. I hope you saw me do that. It's already starting to set up, but I've dropped it down. It could even use one more little drop, so I'm going to do that again. But putting that bead, there we go, because again, I've got air kind of right on me, so it dries this glue pretty quickly. I'm going to go ahead and drop that down on the zap, and I'll shim this up on this side there, so when this dries, or it sets, that'll be on there, and it'll be even, okay? But I would let that sit overnight. And then it's on there, right? You've glued it. It's done. You're not going anywhere with that. Let's say, though, that I have a piece like this, these two pieces that I want to glue together. And I'm looking, and can you see down the side here? Like maybe I want to do some, like I want to string from the top of this disc, maybe get some threads in there, and then maybe I want to put tassels or something down here with this. I don't know, for whatever reason, I might want to glue that. That's a great candidate for E6000. So I'll come in and I'll extrude a drop of the E6000 there. Can you see how like runny it is? I should have had a toothpick ready to go. But I'll get kind of that coming off there, and I'll put another blob. Let's see, it's already setting up. So I'm going to take it right out of the tube there. And I'm going to add a little bit. This is the thing about the E6000 that I don't always love, is that it sets up so fast that it gets that kind of stringy business going on, right? So now I'm going to really carefully set that, you know how they used to say in that infomercial, set it and forget it. Well, that's there. And it's hard to see. If I move it here, maybe you'll be able to see it a little bit. That E6000 has come in and filled in the gaps underneath this bead here. Okay, so this, again, I'll just let it sit here until tomorrow, till I'm ready to use it. That's the problem I think that people run into with glue, is that they want to screw with it. They want to like reposition. They want to do, you know, all that kind of stuff. With gluing, you've got to get in and get out and you're done. Okay. So these are with the Zap. This like kind of space filler is the E6000. I like putting them on a plastic baggie because if a little bit of glue or something runs out, it's very easy to peel that plastic baggie back off. You can see this. I shouldn't do this. I shouldn't pick this up, but this is already setting with that Zap. Okay. But normally I would want to just let that sit there until I'm ready to use it. Okay. So I hope that is a good, quick primer on our glues that we carry here at beadshop.com. That GS Hypo for a knot that is on thread, that's a flexible knot, things like rhinestones, crystals, small things like that. Your Zap, when we're gluing like an earring back on, or we're gluing stone to stone or metal to glass or whatever, or if we're gluing leather into a clasp. E6000, a really good gap filler. So if you have a clasp that has a lot of space in it, or if you're gluing something that has some like up and down, right, and you need to fill that valley with some glue to make it really, really sturdy, that's when I'd use that E6000. Again, I store these all on their little feet like this, so the glue doesn't run out the top. And before I put the lids on, I always do a quick wipe with a tissue. So that's it, everybody. I hope that primer helps. Just remember, when you're working, some safety things working with glue, you want to work in a well-ventilated area so that you're not breathing in any of those glue fumes, anything like that. You want to protect your space using like a baggie, a plastic baggie, and you want to make sure and go ahead and wash your hands after using this glue. You can find all of this glue right on our website, right at beadshop.com. And I will see you next Wednesday at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time for our next Bead Shop Live. And of course, Fridays at 10:30 a.m. Pacific. Thanks so much for watching, and you'll find all of these great basics right on our YouTube channel under the Bead Shop Basics section, or right on our website. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.